stage where we really need to get to something that we can hold on to. So we've had a lot of discussion. If this was, if you were working for a company and you're trying to solve something, you wouldn't be breaking it up into little 30-minute conversations, every other day for 2 weeks. So this isn't exactly what it would be like if you were out and you were working on coming up with a project idea. So, for example, I worked on a building, my first construction project in a leadership role ended up being a $1.5 million 10 classroom facility called the ELC. So Christy's been there, she's been at Guam. So the Early Learning Center. We had had a typhoon my first year in Guam. It blew away our kindergarten building, which was an old house that had had the roof ripped off and stuff. And so we had to build a new kindergarten preschool facility. And in Guam, everything's built out of concrete. And there's different ways you can build. If you ever watch how they build here in the States, like if they build a Target or a Walmart or Home Depot, they pour the floor of the whole building, giant warehouse building. They let that cure. Then they literally just put up small forms on top of that floor and they pour concrete on top of that. They put some kind of oil down or whatever. And basically the concrete levels out and that floor, because it's perfectly flat, becomes the form for the wall. And then they just tilt it up. It's called tilt up construction. So that's one way to do it. The other way is to do concrete construction is with block, like cement brick or bricks. But in Guam, they also have companies that do what's called precast concrete construction. And I didn't know anything about concrete construction at all. I barely know anything about any construction, but I knew more than anyone else. So I kind of by default had to end up being the point man on this. There was no one else that had any construction experience at all. So I took what I did know. I did a lot of reading. I met with the different contractors and learned a lot. In precast concrete construction, for what we were going through at that time, we needed something that wasn't going to take a year to build. We needed something that would be indestructible, and we needed something to be very predictable, like simple for us to plan out. So we needed 10 classrooms, and then the government tells you how many square feet per child, and we knew we wanted to average like up to 22 children times however many square feet it was. So we knew we needed a room that had, I think it was 800 square feet or something like that. So now let's see here. It would be more than that. Anyway, close to 800, 900 square feet per room. So we had to design this thing. Everyone had an opinion. We all sit down. Most people have zero construction experience. Me, I'd done the research, but I'm not an expert by any means. And I'm like, out of, the 5 people at the table, I'm the lowest ranking person. And I'm supposed to run point on this, and everyone has an opinion. And not only the people at the table have opinions, but then the people that have their ear also have opinions. And it was like chaos. And it was so hard to make progress. And every time you make a little progress, then someone come in with a new idea, and it was like starting over every time. It's so frustrating. And we'd have 4 or 5 hour long meetings about it. And I didn't know anything about how to conduct a meeting, it was just so frustrating. And sometimes it felt like the person with the loudest voice, basically what they wanted is what was always going to happen. No one wanted to cross them unless it was like a big deal. And it just got harder and harder. And the facility had to be built on a very small, we own like 10 little pieces of property. If you looked at a map, it looks like a patchwork quilt. And this building had to fit on one little rectangle of property. And so you couldn't just design the building based on, we had a building like this back in the States or whatever. We had to say, well, it's got to fit here. And in the end, we came up with, I think it was me and my brother-in-law, we were talking one day, and it's like, these dimensions are the same exact proportions as a 4x6 note card. Every room is the same as a 4x6 note card. And we need 10 classrooms. And it was all of a sudden like a eureka moment. Get out 10 4x6 cards, lay them on the table, say, how could we configure this building to fit the space of the property was like the size of half my desk, and we needed to get 10 cards on it. How can we do it? Well, then we started laying them down, and I was like, this is brilliant. So we took the 10 cards into the meeting. I labeled them all 1 through 10. These are the different classrooms. And we started coming up with it. And now everyone's working together. Now we're all communicating. And the design we finally came up with was 2 L-shaped buildings, 1, 2, 3, 4 classrooms long ways. And at the end, the other one goes this way. And then we built them like this. So you had a walkway in here, a walkway in here. And the way they do that is they put all the they build the walls at their factory, and then they bring the walls in. They're giant concrete walls, bring in a crane, set them in place like Legos, and they build the whole thing. And then they pour a roof over the whole top of it. Ended up being so much better. But we could have probably had a better building in half the time if we would have just understood how to kind of think about projects, how to communicate, how to have a decent meeting, how to bring ideas. We got 0 feedback from people. Like, we didn't ask the kindergarten teachers what they thought. You know, we knew that they needed a bathroom and a toilet and a sink and stuff, but we really didn't tell them anything until it was already designed. We're like, here, you should be happy about this. We're giving you a brand new building. And, you know, and then the ones that maybe were old enough to be, you know, where they're not afraid to complain, we say, oh boy, you know, why are you putting cabinets there? That doesn't make sense. It's like, hey, don't ask any questions. We're giving you a brand new building. I mean, it's like we did everything really wrong. It's only by God's grace that it turned out okay. But we could have done so many things so much better. So then we had to, about 3 years later, we broke ground on a $5 million building. And we had learned from that first one. So what we did, we recognized that even though we had all learned a lot about construction from the first building, this is a whole nother animal. It's like, you know, 5 times the size and just so much more complicated. So we actually paid our architect and engineering firm to have one guy that basically acted as the facilitator of every meeting. And he knew what he was doing. Not only did he know construction and everything we needed, and he worked for an architectural firm, but he also knew how to conduct meetings and keep us all on track and set deadlines and stuff like that. And so he was a very good project manager. So we recognized we didn't have a project manager. The projects that we had done previously before that had limited success because we really did not understand project management. So maybe that's why I really wanted to make sure that you guys had some tools for how to think through a project. Because if you go to work somewhere and they say, hey, we want you to be on this task force, we're going to design a new wing to our facility. And you walk in that meeting and it's just chaos. You're going to get that same feeling I had, like, oh, this could be so much better. So maybe if you have a few tools that you can bring in, even if you're not the head of it, and say, hey, you know what, I think we can make good progress if we kind of break this into these little pieces, you know, get them all to read the same book, or get them all to, you know, do something that would prep you guys so that you can actually have a good meeting. Churches go through big problems with this. When churches want to build a building, a lot of times it splits the church, or it's just, you know, a couple of people dominate the decision and everyone else just hears about it later. And people, what you find out later on are people are super frustrated about it. They might not speak up then, but down the road, if there's anything wrong with it, it all comes out. So I'm hoping that I'm helping you guys learn a better way. There's just a better way. And I think we're doing it here. We're doing it in a lot of the classes. So this morning, I came in early and I was really thinking about this. And I think we're kind of, because we did feedback internally, I think that we've already done this through our conversations. We kind of talked about, kind of in a low res way, we talked about what could this look like? And we kind of went back, and I'll show you kind of how I came to that. As I was thinking about it, I was thinking the first feedback was really outside this room, but really the first feedback was what we did for 2 class periods last week. So we actually worked through this, and now we're kind of here at the concept stage, and then we come back for more feedback and really testing it with people. So I was actually encouraged this morning. I'm like, I think we're actually a step farther than I thought. So I want to show you what I mean by that. And then I'll show you what we're going to, do with this today. Okay, so as a quick review, when this gets pulled up here, you guys are quiet today. We just have 2 classes this week, 3 classes next week. And then that final Monday is really just going to be like talk time. Okay, so we worked through this, we've worked through this, we've kind of had our own feedback, and now what we've come up is with an adjusted solution that is the prototype. This is where I'm at today. So we've actually worked a little farther than I thought as of last week. I want to show you why I think that. So when we brainstormed, we really kind of came up with this concept of what we thought this needs to include, job fair, field trips, workshops, see what else, some way of record keeping, tutoring, an office, rotating jobs, some kind of ongoing feedback, for all the reasons we listed. And then we talked about, as far as we went through what's qualitative and quantitative questions of feedback. So qualitative kind of goes on how you feel about something. Quantitative is putting some kind of measurement to something, right? And so we talked about that quite a bit the other day, and kind of how to get that. There's probably going to be some kind of online piece to this. There's going to be some kind of physical piece to this. And some of it goes beyond just this initial feedback. Some of it will be ongoing feedback. So I tried to kind of crystallize all this together. So let's make this smaller. All right. It's pretty slick the way it does that. Okay, cool. So this doesn't have to stay this way, but after my first sip of coffee, I was like, oh, we could call it the Faith Works Office. Who knows? That sounds clever right now, but it might be terrible. It might be heresy. I have no idea. But the minimum viable product, this is where we are today, minimum viable product. Why? So if we take everything we've talked about, the why is we want to enhance faith students' testimony and community and strengthen relationships with local employers, right? So the why is not faith kids need jobs. We've kind of proved that. That's not even our responsibility, and it doesn't seem to be an issue. Community employers don't know about faith kids. That might be partially true, but that's probably not the why, because we could just put an ad out there, hey, faith kids need jobs. So the why goes back to kind of our mission. We want to enhance our community testimony, and we want to strengthen relationships with local employers. The what, so what do we want this, whatever we're going to call it, to be? We want it to be a program that helps faith students get better jobs now and better career opportunities in the future. And by better, could be higher pay, targeted opportunities, quality experiences, things like that. The how, job prep, coaching. So that could be like a one-on-one thing with a student that's already been through training with a current student. Workshops, online tools, internships, field trips, business leader advice, like bringing a business leader into the classroom, on-campus advisors, a faculty member, possibly, whatever. The who, okay, so what we're narrowing this down to, that this is going to really impact, are the current faith students. It could spill over to graduates, it could spill over to alumni, but current faith students. And then the when, begin as soon as new freshmen are onboarded. So, obviously we're not greeting them at the door as soon as they get to the dorm, but pretty soon after that, once they've gotten their classes figured out and stuff like that, we'd like to be in the earliest stages with new freshmen. It could be during their entire local college residency. So obviously go on the REBA program, we probably can't help them with the job. But if they're here, we can definitely help them, especially since parts of it do have to do with like face-to-face interaction. And then finally, as seniors prepare to graduate, it can kind of morph into, hey, are you going to stay in the area? Are you going to go to seminary? Are you going to, whatever, you're waiting for someone, your spouse to graduate. Okay, how can we help you, stay in the area and find the best thing? So this is it. Feedback wise, we could get feedback from students, parents, employers, faculty and staff, and something I thought this morning, other colleges. We cannot possibly be the first people who have thought of this. There's got to be lots of other people who have done this. I think the first seeds of this that I've experienced was when I was getting off of active duty Air Force. So 1995, they sent me to I forget what they called it. It was some kind of career seminar. It was a whole day. And they had a person come in that had retired from being in the military like 30 years. And they talked about how difficult the transition was from, basically wearing camouflage every day to having to put on, civilian clothes, what they call civilian clothes, like having to pick out your clothes every day. Military people don't have to pick out their clothes. It's the same thing every day. Very simple. Basically having to work with different kinds of people. Military, everyone gets more and more alike the longer you're in. And just certain things not happening the way it was in the military. So we had to go through a whole briefing on that. Then they had a guy come in, of all things, from J.C. Penney's. This guy had been in the military, got out, and he was the J.C. Penney's rep to the military for how to dress for success. And then gave us a book on how to dress for success. Because a lot of military people, they're either really sharp in uniform or they look like total hobos all the rest of the time. And they didn't know how to transition. And so we go through all this. And I think it goes back to some of what you guys are saying is you can't assume anything, right? So they couldn't assume that just because military people are successful in the military, that they'll be successful in the civilian world. We can't assume that just because someone loves Jesus and made it into college, that they're going to be a great employee at, some local company. And so we might be able to help them with that. What I think we need to do is I think we need to narrow down this discussion for the next 20 minutes on what can we ask students, current students, not faculty, staff. I'd like to Wednesday explore what could we ask parents and see if we can ask some parents while they're here Friday or somehow send something to the parents. But I think if we could focus on students over the next couple of days, even though we could get this other feedback going, that might be for a future class, just because of where we're at time-wise. And there's already data I know we need to have. We need to have some demographic information, like gender of who you're talking to, age. They could give their name optional. It's not like there's anything in here that's like privacy. What year of school are they? Are they currently employed? Are they from the local area? I was thinking about, if someone is from greater Des Moines area, they're going to have a different impression of this than maybe someone that's out here from Arizona or something like that. And then are they planning to stay local when they graduate? Which would be like a yes, no, or I'm not sure, whatever. So I think this demographic information needs to be the first couple of things you're asking. And it'd probably take you less than 1 minute to ask them that. And when you do research for college stuff, so if any of you ever go on to work on a master's degree, when you do research, there's all kinds of rules now. Some of it has to do with HR type laws, which you learn in our business class. But I think it's because of some research has gone way over the line in the history of America, like colleges doing medical research on students, allowing students to be subjected to different drugs or different things that are damaging to them, or, they bring 10 students in the room and someone just screams in their face for 1 hour. And then they say, how do you feel after that? And they're traumatized for the rest of their life. And it's like, well, it was a college project. So there's all kinds of rules now. Matter of fact, if you do formal research for a college project, it has to go to a board that the college has set up, and they have to check through every little thing. So, because if you think about med schools, they do have to do research on students. Like they do have to say, hey, would you be willing to test this caffeine pill? And you have to have all that figured out. So, you don't have to worry about this at this level. This is more of a survey, okay? This is just a survey. We're not doing anything that's going to invade someone's privacy, but you always have to give people the option. They don't have to give their name, whatever. When you do formal research, everything you do, unless the person says that you can use everything that they're telling you or all their information, or if there's results, you cannot have any question that when someone looks at the results, that someone, even though it doesn't have their name, you know who it is. So like I did research from a master's class and I got demographic, age, level of degree, things like that, gender. Well, so all those things kept separate, you don't really know who's who. But when I use the tool SurveyMonkey, it can tell me age, degree, gender. Well, there was only one 35-year-old female with a doctorate at our ministry. So I could tell what her answers were. So you have to block being able to do that to be able to legally include that in your research. So anyway, more information than you need. Okay, what we need to do is spend the next few minutes talking about quantitative and qualitative questions. What would be the absolute things that we would want to ask? Quantitative, and let's say that you only have less than 5 minutes to talk to someone. Let's try and keep this short because I'd rather get more feedback, from more people than, take up someone, for 15 or 20-minute conversation. And then what's going to happen is you're going to get very little feedback. You're just going to get it from those few people. And that kind of skews it because you might talk to the 3 people that are really disgruntled with something or whatever. So quantitative, again, would be, is there a number that is involved, a measurement that's involved with their answer? Qualitative is more of a feeling, a word. Some questions are just yes, no questions, right? So you could have more yes, no questions because they're just very quick to answer. But anything that has like them having to express something, you want to make sure it's a very well-worded question so that you don't accidentally ask something that gives you an answer that doesn't help you. For example, you could ask someone, are you currently satisfied with the pay you're receiving at your job? Yes, no. That might be good for us to know. I don't know. But you could say, how does your current pay compare to other jobs you've had? Oh boy, now it's story time. You might never get through the survey if you ask a question like that, because depending on who you talk to, if they're lonely, they might just tell you their whole life story. That's not what you're looking for, right? So that might not help us actually achieve what we're looking for. So I need you guys to think about, and you can just think for a minute so I don't have to totally put you on the spot, but we need some qualitative and quantitative questions that we could throw on a little survey that I could shoot to you later today. And then you could start asking people, today, tomorrow, Wednesday. So if you want to think about it for a minute, we already have all this demographic stuff. I think those will all be helpful. So even if we just had, a couple questions, I really think we need to keep it 3 minutes minimum, 5 minutes maximum. And then if everyone could talk to 5 people, now we're talking almost 50, 60 people just from this room. And you can literally text it to people if it's short enough.
Are we coming up with a demographic or are you just going to do that?
I think that so the demographic stuff that's up there, I'd like to just say that we're definitely doing that. So I wanted to I'll take all the easy ones. So all the easy stuff, that's going to be set. I'll come up with a way of wording it, makes it really simple. I'll send you guys like a little form that you could either send to people or you could read to people or whatever. You could text it to them and they could just send you back yes, yes, no, 17, 23, whatever. So if you guys could just help me come up with a couple quantitative and qualitative questions, we'll pick the best of the best and, try and make it fit into what we're looking for. And it might not answer everything. There is no skeleton key. If you're familiar with that concept where, back in history, there was one key called the skeleton key and it could unlock any door, right? I think it's a Sherlock Holmes concept too. It's like the skeleton key program or whatever. There's no such thing, right? And so there's no such thing as a survey that's going to give you all the data you need. We don't have enough time to get everything. So we just need to get a couple good things that'll help us make some good decisions to get started.
I don't know how maybe it'd be easier to work it into one question, but I kind of thought two questions that build on each other. I was thinking on a scale of 1 to 10, if a better opportunity, i.e. like higher pay, better experience, something like that, came up, would you consider leaving your current job? And then like in addition to that, if a form of tutoring or program was required, would you still consider it? That makes sense.
Would you consider leaving your job
Yeah,
for a better opportunity?
yeah. So like higher pay or better experience or something more in their
Yeah.
area.
That'll fit into that better over here, better being higher pay, targeted opportunities, quality experiences. Yeah. Okay. And then the other, what was your second one?
Well, just like follow up if like a form of tutoring or like a or like a short class, you know, I don't want to call it class, but like program was required, would you still consider it?
Got it.
Just figuring out like, since we were talking about how we kind of want them to go through some sort of tutoring or
Right.
training before we connect them. Like a pre-screening interview. or something like that.
Yeah. So this, if you, and this is really good, and I don't claim to be like an awesome research person. When you work on like a PhD, for example, you have to take all these classes on how to research, because I've been looking at maybe getting my PhD. It's like, oh, that seems so intimidating. But if you just ask yes or no, would you leave your current job for a better job? You already know that 9 out of 10 people are going to say yes. That's a leading question, right? So you're kind of setting people up. That's how a lot of political polls and surveys are. They seem, you know, they're not unethical. On the other hand, you're leading them into something. So it's kind of like marketing. We're not trying to market idea. We're actually just trying to get honest feedback. So I like how Daniel, the 1 to 10, then you kind of feel, is someone really warm on the idea? Are they cold to the idea? Are they, you know, ambivalent? Everyone's going to probably be more than a 1. And so that allows you to ask the follow-on question with everyone. So, you know, would you be willing? We don't know how long the process is. But would you be willing to go through this process? Could be, you know, all the things we listed. Could be a workshop, could be an advisor, could be an application. So what else?
This is very similar to that question, but like if we were to offer optional workshops, would you be interested in taking them, or like even if it's just like how to do a resume or something like
Right.
that, like completely not really related to getting a better job, but in the immediate future, I guess, but it would be beneficial.
And maybe if you give an example like resume writing, job interview, I think it's one of the things we talked about before. So on surveys too, sometimes you can ask the same basic question 2 different ways to make sure they understand what you're asking. And this might be a way of doing that. That's a big thing in surveys when it comes to language. So if you say, are you, you know, cautious about your job situation? Well, they might be like, oh boy, I'm a very cautious person. Yeah, I sure am. And then you ask another question, 10 questions later, say, are you opposed to risk in your job situation? They'd be like, oh no, I trust in the Lord. I'm not worried about risk. And so they answer differently. Well, obviously, you used words that mean something different to them. And so sometimes you'll notice a survey will ask a question like 3 different ways. You get that when you do the DISC profile with me in the Leadership Toolbox class, you kind of notice you take like a 170 question survey, and it's like the same question asked 5 different ways. So they make sure that they're on the same page with you. Yeah, so this might actually help clarify, you know, this up here, the would they be willing to do the process? And if you separate them they're not going to necessarily tie it together, but we could definitely put the information together.
I'm not really sure how to word this one, but basically asking like what their area of work interest would be either during college or after, but have specific options so that you don't get like their whole life story, like you were saying, but like, if you could have like retail or office or camp ministries or stuff like that. And if
Yeah,
it's
we
like
could
that,
have a
then you
little
could have
list.
other option.
Yeah, maybe you could list like the top 10, and then you could have an other, and then they could
That
identify
might help
that.
like start with the process of getting them connected to certain
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, that's great. So anytime they have to define something, that's, even though it's not a numeric like measurement, I believe that fits in under quantitative, because they're actually giving you a specific answer, not just a feeling. Any others? I'll take this and kind of get it down. So you can throw something up here, even if it seems like it ties into one of the others, and I'm going to try and narrow it down later today.
Something else we could ask is like, what are some real life job skills you want to grow before you graduate, or like, what do you want to gain from a college job? And just like, you could list a couple options or list like an other section, like we said, and have them type in like whatever they're wanting to grow in or like what skills they need.
Yeah, because they could, they could select all the options, I'd like to know all these things.
It's like they don't know what they don't know, so if we offer them a list of like.
Yep, that's absolutely true. So the last year, those of you who were in history and theology of leadership last year, like in the very first class, I had the author of the book, Organizational Leadership, Skype into the classroom. And I talked to him a couple times. He said, so he's been teaching college leadership classes for like 30 years. He was also worked for the Kansas City Royals organization. He's got all this crazy experience. But he said, in a non-derogatory way, 18-year-olds don't know anything. They just don't, because they've had limited experiences. So they don't even know. It's like when you say, well, what do you want to do as a job? A lot of 18-year-olds don't know, because they've only been exposed to what mom does, dad does, 3 guys in the church, the landscaping company they work for, McDonald's and Chick-fil-A. They don't have a breadth of experience. And so like what Katie's saying, they might not even know what job skills they actually need, which kind of actually helps us prove the point. Like, hey, you know what? As we open their eyes to, we think you need these job skills, maybe they'll agree and take the program. The other way of this kind of coming in handy too is with this data, I can go to the administration of the college and say, hey, this is what we're hearing. This is what we're seeing. Here's the results of our study. We had 60 people respond, and you know what, we're seeing a trend here, and we think it's valuable enough, just like senior seminar or philosophy of music class, that we need to help everyone that comes through get these 3 basic things. And so maybe we can make this part of, they can turn it into a program.
I had something too I was trying to think of, and I don't know if we'd want to ask. I always think of things in like 2 questions, but like if we want to ask, are you thinking of vocational ministry or like career ministry?
Yeah.
So kind of separating at least the person you're interviewing or asking questions. It'd be nice to know if they're planning to go into like actual ministry or into career, and then asking them, you could do a scale of 1 to 10. You could do a yes or no. I feel like a scale of 1 to 10 gives you a better idea. But on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel that the classes here are preparing you for your career? Just because, and that's why I want to do the ministry versus career. Because if they're going to ministry and they're like, oh yeah, 10, I feel like they're doing great. It's like, well, we are a Bible college. But if they're career and they're like, yeah, I feel like a 3, like it kind of shows the differences there.
And that's really good too, because I think in that, I don't know if you guys remember, after everyone had to go home last spring, everyone had to do it was like this survey thing where teachers had to watch you do the survey online and all that. But some of the questions were related to that for accreditation. The accrediting body wants to know, do the students feel like they're prepared when they leave? So college doesn't really get dinged too hard for it, but it should be like a yellow flag at least, like, hey, if they don't feel prepared and we say we're preparing the next generation, there's a disconnect. So, you know, we could say it all day long, but if we're not doing it, we're not doing it. So, and sometimes when people take like the class evaluation, they're just so ready to be done. It's just like, you know, check, get it done. That's what I do.
All C's.
Yeah. Okay, what else? Any others?
Is this gonna be like an online thing, like a Google form that we send out, or is it like a verbally ask these questions?
I think it could probably go both ways, you know, so for some, you know, sitting down next to someone in chapel, talking to your roommate and talking to someone at dinner, you know, you could knock out 5 face to face really quick. Maybe if I did make it a Google Doc or a Google form, I have never made a Google form, but
Even like a Word doc, I feel like
Yeah.
you just emailed a Word doc
yeah,
to
and
somebody.
they could enter their
They could just enter
answers,
everything
yeah.
and email it right back.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'll definitely type it up somehow. I don't have a lot of experience in like fillable documents and stuff.
I think a Google form, it's really easy to do. Like,
Mhm.
it takes no time at all. And I think it'd be easier to organize the data after getting all the answers instead of trying to like, especially with all the lists and stuff,
Mhm.
you're like, more convenient afterwards.
Well, student life uses them all the time, so you could ask them and then put it in chapel announcements or something. And then everybody could do it.
Yeah, I found that chapel announcements,
Nobody reads them.
nobody reads them. And I use myself as an example. So, but maybe we need kind of maybe a multi-pronged attack on this, right? So we need to have where everyone has like a quota. And then we also put it out to the general student body.
With actually announcing chapel. if you want.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
So are we gonna like include like kind of an elevator pitch of our idea, or are we just sending people into this like blind, not putting our ideas in their head?
I think we should have this. It maybe not quite this, but some of this, right?
I make it like a 2-sentence.
Yeah. I'll boil it down. It doesn't have to have everything. What we could do is if we use a term in the questions that need more explanation, we could try and pre-answer it, you know? So that's like by using the word better, what do we mean by that? Well, okay, so maybe we could pre-answer a couple of the things. I could do that. So I think unless someone just has something else they want to add, I think we have enough. We have probably more than enough. I just need to put it all together today and then send it to you. So best case scenario, I'll have this done this afternoon. You'll see an announcement in the class thing, and then it'll tell you like, okay, when to start and how many to have by Wednesday, whatever. Shouldn't be too hard. So hopefully we'd get a good response. Might continue it all the way to the end of the week and then analyze how much feedback we get by next week. But we'll just kind of keep cranking on it. Wednesday, what we might do is talk about, okay, so what would we want to ask parents? What would we want to ask employers? And so that even if we don't get to use all these feedback instruments, we're already kind of setting the stage for, okay, what's the next phase? Because I might do some of this on my own because I engage with the community all the time. So I might send it out to just my contacts that are employers and get their feedback, their direct feedback. So it definitely makes for a stronger case if we're making a case to the administration. Any final comments on this at all? Okay, all right, I'll let you go. Thank you very much.